Hi, welcome to another segment of Bedtime Stories from OHA. I'm Gregg Tripoli from the Onondaga Historical Association. And before I turn in tonight, I want to share a story from one of my favorite characters from our local history. His name is Jimmy Van Heusen, and you probably don't recognize that name. You would be more likely to recognize the songs that Jimmy Van Heusen wrote, and of course the many famous songsters who sang those songs. In fact, Jimmy Van Heusen isn't really his real name. He was born here in Syracuse in 1913 as Edward Chester Babcock, and his friends called him Chester for the rest of his life. He grew up here in Syracuse, went to school here. He had two early loves, music and girls. Now, music got him into problems with school because he was actually concentrating on music and not his other courses, and he was skipping school for his first opportunity for a radio gig with a local radio station here that broadcast from the top floor of the Hotel Syracuse. On that radio program, people used to write in with topics, and Jimmy would make up a song on the spot. It was really good practice for somebody who would write over 1,000 songs and scores of top hits. Now, Chester was skipping school, as I said, for this radio gig, and so he needed a new name in case his parents heard it on the radio, so a pseudonym. In that studio on the top floor of the Hotel Syracuse, a friend of his was with him, and he looked out the window and he saw a big billboard for Van Heusen shirt collars. So he said, "Hey, how about Van Heusen?" And Jimmy said, "Yeah, that's great for a last name. What about a first name?" And the friend said, "Well, I have a cousin who's named Jimmy that I like a lot," so that's how Jimmy Van Heusen was born. Now, Jimmy went to school here in the local area. His love of girls got him into some trouble with schools, and he was expelled from a few of the local schools, but eventually did graduate from the Cazenovia Seminary High School, which was somewhat ironic. At any rate, he did spend a little time at Syracuse University, but he left in 1933 to go to Tin Pan Alley in New York City, and he left with his good friend, a fellow musician, and his Syracuse neighbor, a guy named Jerry Arlen. Now, Jerry's older brother was named Harold Arlen. He's the guy who wrote Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Syracuse music history is absolutely remarkable. So Jimmy goes to New York City. They actually took over Harold's gig at the Cotton Club there because Harold went west to write music for the movies. While Jimmy was at the Cotton Club in New York City, he signed a deal with a music company called Remick Music, and through that he made a connection with a young native of Hoboken, New Jersey named Francis Sinatra. Jimmy's first hit with Frank Sinatra was a tune called Imagination. He wrote that with Johnny Burke. Jimmy was really fortunate to work with some of the best lyricists in the business. He wrote a lot of hits with Johnny Burke and then Sammy Cahn, amongst others. They followed up that hit for Frank of Imagination with another tune by Jimmy and Johnny called Polka Dots and Moonbeams. In fact, Johnny Burke and Jimmy Van Heusen wrote so many hits together, they were known in the business as the Gold Dust Twins. Well, by the end of 1940, Jimmy was also on his way out west to write music for the movies. He got his first Academy Award for a song that he wrote for Bing Crosby called Swingin' on a Star. It was from a movie called Goin' My Way. In fact, he wrote a lot of hits for Bing Crosby, and Jimmy wrote all the music for the On the Road movies that Bing starred in with Bob Hope. In the last movie from that series, as a tribute to Jimmy, they named his character Chester Babcock. Now, while he was doing all of this, Jimmy was also indulging in his other love, which was flying. Jimmy loved to fly. He was a pilot. In fact, he was a test pilot for Lockheed in the ramp-up to World War I when that company was really putting out planes on a rather haphazard basis. So being a test pilot at that time was a very dangerous occupation. So Jimmy did his flying under his original name, Chester Babcock. Otherwise, the movies would not have allowed him to work with them because of the insurance costs. But Jimmy did continue to write music for the movies. He was nominated for 14 Academy Awards. After that 1944 win, he followed that up with another win in 1957. That was a tune, I think, called All of Me. And then he followed that up with a 1959 win with a tune called High Hopes from a movie called A Hole in the Head. You may also know that that song, High Hopes, was the 1960 presidential campaign theme song for President John F. Kennedy. In 1963, Jimmy won his last fourth Academy Award for a song called Call Me Irresponsible from a film called Papa's Delicate Situation. Jimmy also won the very first Emmy ever in history for an original song. That song was Love and Marriage that he wrote for Frank Sinatra in a television production of Our Town. That song also, you may know, was revived on television as the theme song for a sitcom called Married with Children. Now, Jimmy and Frank, they had a great relationship, and Jimmy wrote a lot of hit songs for Frank, probably about 40 top hits, very successful and lucrative relationship. But their relationship went beyond the professional. These guys were really best friends. They had a mutual love of wine, women, and song that created a friendship that lasted their entire lives. Jimmy was so close to Frank that Frank actually, when he attempted suicide one time, slitting his wrists over his breakup with Ava Gardner, he did it in Jimmy's apartment in New York City. And it was Jimmy who got Frank to the hospital in time. And it was Jimmy who greased the palms to seal the lips of anybody who could contradict his concocted story of an accident with broken glass. Jimmy and Frank were tight. They had each other's back. They lived near each other in Palm Springs. Jimmy married late in life when he was 56 years old for the first time. He was confined to a wheelchair in his late 60s due to a stroke. He came to Syracuse often during his life to visit his family and also a home that he had in the Adirondacks. He came here for the last time in 1986 when he was honored at the 10th anniversary celebration of the Civic Center here downtown. Jimmy Van Heusen was an amazing songwriter. Certainly his name is not as well known as the songs he wrote, and he was overshadowed by the more publicly famous singers of his songs. But in the music business and in Hollywood, Jimmy was the man. He was charming, he was charismatic, he was a hard partier, he was one of those original Rat Packers. His alcohol consumption was legendary. His language was peppered with words that would make a gutter blush. But he had a lot of personal magnetism and swagger that resonated with the ladies. People loved him. He was a lot of fun. Everybody wanted Jimmy to attend their parties and write their songs. So he was really the guy. And somewhere in the night sky over Hollywood, Jimmy is still swinging on his own star, I'm sure. The story of Jimmy Van Heusen is told in the Regional Aviation History Museum at the Syracuse Hancock International Airport. If you haven't seen that museum, I highly recommend it. It's a great new state-of-the-art museum, and not only with Jimmy stories, but it contains a lot of stories from our amazing aviation history. So thanks for joining me for another segment of Bedtime Stories from OHA. I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, sleep well. Good night.